Hey everyone, this is me, a quick review of the Cas Hanwei Practical Rapier with a 43-inch blade. A quick disclaimer to this video, I have much more experience with Japanese blades than I do European blades. However, I've owned this rapier for a number of years, and I believe I have enough data on this sword to be able to give it a fair review. Plus, on top of that, when we are talking about swords, there are some things that are universal in swords. As I mentioned, the length of the blade on this rapier is 43 inches. The length of the grip from the guard to the inside of the pommel, right here, is 3 3/4, which is okay because on a rapier in general, your finger goes over the guard. So even with me, I have large hands and I have plenty of space. The point of balance is 5 inches away from the quillins, which is the cross guard, and the weight is 2 pounds 8.7 ounces. The first thing I want to say is this rapier actually has very nice balance. I don't have a ton of experience in rapier fighting, but I've seen people who are more experienced with rapier move very fast with this very rapier. The guard shape looks very nice. The only imperfection is this looks like it's bent up a bit this way right here and then goes back down, but that's a very minor thing, and obviously for the price point of this rapier you can't expect perfection. On top of that, the wire wrap looks very nice. It's tight, it's very consistent. The only problem really is at the end you can see the plastic handle under the wire, and this is a plastic handle. And that's unfortunately pretty much the only good that I have to say about this rapier. Now on to the cons. The first con is this blade is just way too flexible. If you look, I'm hardly moving my wrist, but the blade is wobbling all over the place, as you can see. It is just way too flexible, I think. When I throw a stab, as you can see, the blade is just wobbling all over the place. So that's the first con, is the blade is just wobbly. This problem is more an issue with the 43-inch blade. I used to know someone who had the 37-inch blade, and it wasn't as much a problem for him because obviously the blade was shorter. But on the 43-inch blade, this is a problem. My next problem is with the ricasso right here. It's very square and sharp if you don't have gloves on. Right here, these are very square, sharp corners. So what I ended up doing is coming up with this blade cover. Just slides over the blade, and it makes using this rapier much more comfortable. As I said, when wearing gloves, this isn't an issue. With a cover on it, it's not an issue either. But if you don't want to have to wear gloves all the time, and you don't want to have to make a cover like this, then you're going to have to round the edges on that ricasso. The next problem is this blade steel is rather soft. Whenever I practiced with another person, when I got home, I always had to take burrs off of the blade. Now, I'm sure this would be less of a problem if the edges were rounded on the blade as well. The square edges on the blade definitely take damage more easily. So if those were rounded over, that would definitely help as well. My next issue is with this pommel. As you can see, as I unscrew it, it's rather asymmetrical, and there's actually a gap on the pommel. So that's not great. They could have done better on that. The next problem is once the pommel is loose, this handle is extremely loose, as you can see in here. So that's not great either. Now, it could be that they made this handle loose because of the fact that there are different blades available for this, and you can buy different blades from Hanwei. So they wanted to make it so you didn't have to do any fitting on the tang, and that could be. And to be fair, once the pommel is tightened down, it's not as big a deal. However, when tightening this pommel down, obviously the grip wants to turn a little bit. So that's just something that you're going to have to deal with if you buy this rapier. Also, in regard to the grip, once the pommel is off, as you can see, the grip falls right off. And now is a good time to show you that is plastic. This is a plastic grip. And also, once the grip and pommel are off, the guard slides right off as well. This doesn't have anywhere near the press fit that it should. And part of that is because if you look, there's a lot of slop between the tang and the opening for the tang in the guard. There's just a lot of slop, and this allows this to move all over the place. However, this is unfortunately to be expected for the price range. However, I believe they could tighten that up a little bit so it's not wobbling all over the place. Also, the grinds aren't even on this. As you can see, the ridge is not perfectly centered on both sides, and if you look here, they're not even either. Now, to be fair, for a practice rapier, that doesn't really matter, but it is most certainly a talking point. One thing that I noticed in practice as well is with this button tip, it does stop stabs very well. However, in practice, if doing cuts, it was possible to connect with just the button tip, and that would definitely hurt. More so because now all that force is concentrated right on the very edge of that button tip. So, not a huge problem, but again, it's a talking point. One thing keep in mind with this guard shape is blades can slip through the holes. It is possible. This is not Hanwei's fault, however, this is just part of the design of a swept hilt. This guard shape is historic, and that's just part of the trade-off you have to get for having a lighter hilt. If you want more protection, you're going to have to get something like a cup hilt. However, that's going to be heavier. So it's a trade-off. If you want more protection, you get something like a cup hilt, but if you want something lighter, you get a swept hilt. Also, one thing to take note of is for this price point, unfortunately, you can't expect a scabbard. And with European swords in general, scabbards aren't provided. So I ended up making my own scabbard for it out of wood. This is not a leather covered scabbard. This was just to store the blade in and for transporting the blade. So now finally, do I recommend this rapier? Obviously there's a lot of cons with this rapier, but one thing we have to consider is the price point. This rapier can be had for under $200. I've even seen this for a little bit under $190. Or you could buy it for a little bit over $200. But generally under $210. So, for that price range, obviously certain compromises have to be made. Especially when you consider the fact that with this rapier, you can change out the blades. So if one blade gets too damaged, you can buy another blade, put the fittings on, and you're back in action. If you do decide to buy this rapier, I would make a couple changes, namely get something for the ricasso, or maybe if you're comfortable wearing gloves, that's fine, or even round these edges out a little bit, and the same with the blade if you're comfortable doing that yourself. If you are not comfortable doing that yourself, take it to someone who is comfortable to do that. Personally, what I would say is, for the price point, don't steer clear of it, but consider other options as well. Most of these issues, as I said, are not deal breakers, but if you can get something a little bit better, definitely take a look at other things. Consider the price point, consider how much more you're willing to pay for something a little bit better, and take all that into consideration if you are looking at this rapier. If you do buy one of these rapiers and you need some work done on it, I do run my own sword business, so I can do things like rounding edges if you're not comfortable doing that yourself. So that's pretty much it. That's my review on the Cas Hanwei Practical Rapier with 43-inch blade. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll see you next video. See ya!